You should not record one guitar, duplicate it on another track, pan one on the left and one on the right, thinking that will create some kind of stereo with because you'll have face related issues. You shouldn't do this because of face problems. You should do that because it will not give you face problems. You must have heard all these things when you were seeing a lot of YouTube videos. And if you have wondered what is face, then this video is the right video for you. We're going to discuss about the true meaning of face and how it is going to impact musically in recording, in mixing and mastering. But before we proceed to the video, if you are new here, I'm Flojane, otherwise known as Flow of Music, and I put out a lot of music production related videos. So if that's something that you like, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into the video. Now, in order to understand about the term phase, we need to talk a little bit about frequency. Any kind of frequency of sound wave that you take will look this way. You will have a high pressure and a low pressure. That's how a frequency will look like. And this height is nothing but amplitude. That's the gain. And how many ever revolutions you have. This is one complete revolution. So if you have one revolution within 1 second, we call this as 1 hertz. That's all you need to know about frequencies. Sound waves are depicted using these waves only. You have a higher pressure and a lower pressure. Now, let's move on to a little bit about phase. Now, let's say I have track number 1, which looks like this. And I have another track which looks exactly like the previous track. It could be the duplicate copy as well. So I have literally the same function, literally the same way the other wave also looks like. When these two waves are played together, if you actually look at it, when this wave goes up, the second wave also goes up. When this comes down in pressure, this also goes down. Similarly, this also. Basically, when the first wave is pulled up, the second wave is also pulled up in that same direction. So when these two waves are played together, you will get a resulting wave which is much higher in terms of volume. So it's going to look big. Let's say this was 3 dB and this was 3 dB. You're probably going to get 6 dB of volume out of your track. And that's because it's literally doing the same thing. So it's a combined volume that you're hearing. Now, let's take another scenario. This time, we're going to have a second wave, which is the exact opposite of the first wave. I have this waveform going down and then coming up, then going down and then coming up. Now, if you look at the waveforms, when one waveform goes up, the other waveform goes down. And the opposite happens accordingly. When this goes down, this comes up. That goes up, this goes down. When you have a waveform that are completely opposite to each other, but are equal in terms of the timing and the amplitude, but it's just the exact opposite, you're going to have a resulting waveform which is going to look like that. You're not going to get any waveform because when one goes up, the other is pulling it in the exact opposite direction with the same amplitude. And therefore, you end up getting nothing. You don't get any signal. The combined level is 0. So whether you have 12 dB on each of these signals doesn't matter. The combined level is going to stay 0. This is how phase works. And this is the theory behind phase. When two signals are literally the same copy and you play them together, you're going to hear a huge increase in volume. On contrast, if you have one signal and the other signal the exact opposite of this one, you're going to not get any kind of signal out of this. So I'll show you a couple of examples and then you will be able to understand more about phase. I have this track which has like a 500 Hertz frequency to it. And I have track 1 and track 2 which are literally the same. Both have the same waveform. I'm going to play only track 1 and let's look at the volume levels. Let's just analyze how much of volume we're getting. I'll probably put the volumes at 0 dB so that we can properly justify it. So this is just the track number 1. Listen to this. Okay, we got minus 7.4. You're going to get that same level for track number 2 as well. Same thing, minus 7.4. Now we're going to play them together. Let's see the combined volume. Now that's minus 1.4, which is way higher. It's because they both are literally the same waveform. When one is pushing, the other is also pushing. So now you're going to get an exaggerated level. The gain is going to increase. Now this concept is called as in phase. When I say in phase, it means they both are literally the same phase angles. Now let's do the opposite. In order to change the phase of one track, you need to add a gain plugin. Logic, this is how you get it. You can go to utility, gain. Since mine is a mono track, I've just applied mono. I'm going to open this and I have a phase invert button over here. When I toggle it on, so initially it will look this way. When I turn it back on, it means it has actually inverted this phase like that. 180-degree shift. Now, let's individually listen to it first. This is the track number 1 without any phase invert. Stays at minus 7.4. This is track number 2 with the phase invert. Obviously, it stays at minus 7.4. But when I play them together, if you actually look at the mixer window, there are signals coming through track 1 and track 2. But the combined level is 0. That's the interesting fact about phase. So when you are completely in phase, you get extra levels. If you are completely out of phase, you're not going to get any kind of signal. Now let's talk about how this is going to affect musically. You may not have a music that is having complete destruction maybe. I'll give you some examples. In actual music, you may record a guitar this way, and then if you want stereo width and if you have no theory concept of how stereo width works and if you don't know what phase really means, then what you may tend to do is duplicate that guitar on another track and you will try to pan one on the left and one on the right. If someone's watching this video and you think you do this, that is actually not what you have to do, because that absolutely gives you no stereo width, because it's literally the same signal, and although you put it on different directions, they're just going to add up and they're going to give you such a huge volume increase, and it almost starts to sound like it's just in the center except that the volume is high. For that matter, you can just have one track, just push the volume up. So this is not the way to give stereo effect, especially for guitars. Because of phase issues, because both the instruments are literally the same. And if you think, okay, I can probably use that phase invert option, how is that going to work? You're just going to make this the exact opposite and now you're not going to get any signal. That's the reason why a lot of producers tell that you need to probably record your guitars twice in order to avoid these phase related issues. You shouldn't have an extreme constructive phase or an extreme destructive phase as well. So I'll tell you what happens when you probably record the same instrument, but you record it twice and then you pan it. So when you record the same instrument twice, maybe the first time the waveform may look this way, but the second time, even though if it's the same guitar, same guitarist, same DAW, same equipment, same engineer, really doesn't matter. You may not be able to exactly mimic the way you play the first time. There might be some difference in accent or some small difference between the first recording and the second recording, which actually benefits you. So probably the second recording is looking something like that. Now let's analyze these two tracks. Let's probably look at this level. Now, when you pick this particular area of these two graphs, you see that both go up, but they're not going up all the time, partially. Half of this goes up and more than half goes up on the other track. In some cases, yes, there is destruction. In some cases, there's total construction also happening. So in music, when you play two different tracks at the same time, and if you've recorded them twice, you will have a combination of construction, destruction, and everything in between. Partial constructions, partial destructions. That's what you will actually get in music. So our idea is to get two recordings in a way where they sound good and they don't sound hollow. What I mean by hollow is if I have too much of destruction, I may end up with a track which probably looks like this, and then there's like a complete silence because there's too much of destruction, and then another waveform, and then a little bit of silence, and then another waveform. Now that's not going to be very nice for the listener, right? When you have all these holes and pockets in between your track. So our job is to create a sound which has majority of constructions at least and not a lot of destruction. Meaning when you have two tracks, it should sound full. Common examples are if you probably record electric guitars and you're recording it twice, sometimes even if you record it twice, you will feel like the recording sounds like it only has high frequencies and probably high mids, but you don't hear any of the low end. And you're wondering why that's happening. You're trying to pan it, but when you solo it individually, you are able to hear all the frequencies. When you play them together, it sounds like there's so much of emptiness in the track. And the reason because of that is actually phase. Most of the time it will be because of phase when you do two different recordings. So in those cases, what you need to do is use a phase invert like the plugin I showed you in Logic. Flip the phase on one of the track and see if that solved your issue. Most of the cases, it will solve your issue. Once you flip the phase and you play the track, you'll start to realize that the song sounds much more fuller and the electric guitar has a lot more strength and it sounds fuller and all those stuff. So this is a trial and error, and you only take that decision by listening. It's not as straightforward as a complete construction or a complete destruction unless you duplicate and manipulate a track. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So that's why take your decision by listening, and that's the reason why ear training is so much important. If you are not able to identify which sound is good, between these phase related issues, then that's a big problem, right? You're not going to get the quality. So keep training your ears. Use a lot of websites like Sound Gym or any other ear training website and keep listening to different frequencies, gain changes, EQ changes, so that your ears will be familiar with minute changes as well. You need to listen to subtle changes because that's what mixing and mastering is all about, making subtle changes in order to make a very big impact in music. So this is what phase is all about. So the next time when you hear this word phase, now you know what that means and now you know how to tackle it. So if you found this useful, don't forget to comment and share it with a producer friend who you think this video will be useful for. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Keep making music and I'll see you guys in another video.